some of the greatest compressors, and they've been in the business for a long time, okay? And one of the things that I realized was when I first got into acoustic treatment, you know, that's a science in itself. And let's face the facts. Most of you guys that are creative people, you're not studying acoustic engineering. I mean, you don't understand why your room has a buildup at 150 and this guy's room has a buildup at 40 and this guy's got a 90 hertz buildup, and I'm like going to my buddies and my vocals always sound horrible. So I was like, okay, here's the facts. A lot of people don't have the money for the elaborate Rolls Royce of room correction. But I think room correction has become more important today than it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s, because in those days, I think the studios you could go to were really well built, well thought out, well proportioned. They were engineered correctly. And if you were a professional artist, you'd go to that studio, check your mix. Now here's the good news. If you don't have, you know, the finances or the funds to even get what I'm about to tell you, mastering is a way to do it. That's not pitching my service. If you go to me or you go to somebody else or you go to the next guy down the street, the thing is it is a way to check your mix and say, oh, well, maybe it isn't right. And then what we've been doing lately in our mixing is actually doing stems, and if we need that, and then we'll process the vocals with really awesome gear, and we'll get you what you want, whether it takes a day or it takes as long as it is until you get what you want. So this is what I wanted to show you today that was absolutely on my list of probably not going to work. And the reason being because I remember back in the day that this company built one of these. It's called a Dbx Driverack, and it was the iPad. Timeout. But back in the day, oh no, there's a crack on it. No, I'm just messing with you. It's been there. So the Driverack back in the day was like this thing we had in this small DJ setup. And I remember listening to it, and at that time when that stuff was being built, I don't know if it was like going through a miserable time in audio, but it was like tinny. Behringer stuff was like harsh and not cool. It was like, and I could hear it. I mean, like as a guy like that didn't know what I know now, I could hear it. I was like, it doesn't sound real good, man. It's like, it's really like nasally sounding. And it could just have been the guy's EQ, or maybe I wasn't giving it a fair shake, or maybe the guy didn't know what he was doing in the places that I was listening. But so I started realizing that these companies came a long way to make this available. Just like companies like Warm Audio, they make it available. They make stuff that is set apart on classic records. They make it available. And Dbx created a thing called the Pa2, which is a drive rack, but it's a lot more than a drive rack, and I'm going to tell you why. So number one, I wouldn't need a drive rack in this studio. So we actually took and we set it up to this to see what it would do, and we set it up to the speakers over here. I'll take the camera off the tripod, walk around, and show you right now. So if I take this iPad, number one, the drive rack can be controlled from an iPad. So if I connect to it, you're going to see this room over here, and we actually auto EQ'd this room. So it's really neat because these are like really high fidelity speakers in that second room. So let me show you this first. So that's the room over there to the left. It's a warmer sounding room, and now I can tell why, because it's got some boosts in the lows. I mean, actually got some cuts in the lows, but then it's boosting up here in the 200. So if you're saying, oh, my room's a little warmer, I love the sound of it, it could be because, you know, it's got a little bit of a lift there. Now this room over here that we're sitting in is like pretty much dead flat. It wouldn't be that drastic of changes. This room over there was for recording and capturing. But check this out. So if I go over here, what I can do, because it's one of my super references, man, and I was like, I want to see if this works, because that's a lot. I had a setup that was way too expensive for that. I was like, man, I'd like to get a mastering EQ. Let's face the facts, dude. I'm not the hallway of the whole entire studio, but there's a second room to the right, and then all the way down there's a room. But this is the second room, and it's pretty much like a live room. Now, what's really neat about this is I started to realize the benefits of checking out live sound and seeing, okay, how's this going to sound? We have a show coming up in October that I got to help out with the sound, and I was like, man, what a great way to see how this works. Now, these speakers in this room are unbelievable. I mean, they're actually more imaged than the, I would say, is it accuracy? Maybe, but they're more imaged than the focals. They have a humongous low end. And I started to think, man, wouldn't I like to put these into use and actually use them for something and start to really reference people's masters? You'll see these in mastering studios quite a bit. I'm very fortunate to have them over in this room. The fun part about them is they're so lifelike that I could really reference a lot of material. I could reference how it's going to sound in a hi-fi situation, and I can also reference, you know, how it's going to sound in a club, and it's really beneficial for people that their music makes the way to these places, because then I can step back, sit over here, forget about all the hardware that's set up, listen to it, be honest with it. I actually have a wireless setup where I can click over to this speaker, this television here that runs the Mac that's in the studio, and I can make small revisions based on what I hear in here. So what's mastering? It literally is that, to make sure it's translating, make sure the image is correct, make sure that it doesn't sound too compressed on big systems and over compressed on small systems, and it has life and it has image. I think the number one thing that I hear is poor quality preamps that then get over compressed and then they get buried in the mix, and we try to bring life to that in this room. So what we did with this, let me put this iPad back on, is we ran a test tone. Give me a second as I make the camera just sort of chill. So right now it's saying I have to go back to this Driverack, which I gotta fix this on this. But look, so I'm logging in here and I can look at my EQ. So let's click on the auto EQ. And that's the auto EQ of this room. So it's reflectively changing that, and here is the great news about all this. It sounds phenomenal. I thought it was going to be a cheap version of a system that I was really sold on, and I thought it was just going to be a knockoff version, and it wasn't going to do what it was supposed to do, and I was just so concerned that I would be ruining, you know, the image of those really amazing speakers. And I'm going to be very honest with you, I actually feel like the biggest issue that I always thought about when using something like that is putting something in the path from where the audio comes out of this room. It actually feeds another antelope piece, a Zodiac, just a small little DAC, they call it. And then that DAC would hit the DBX, then the DBX would hit the speakers. Now, with that being said, there's an amplifier that has a color of its own, so it was really amazing. You know, if I had like my nephew and niece over, they like think it sounds better than the local movie theater, which is pretty incredible. But yeah, it's just an insanely amazing setup. So I'm thinking, okay, well, if I put that in there, is it going to make it worse? And that was my big concern. Like, am I going to spend money on something and it's going to just sort of degrade the signal and the quality? And the answer is no. It actually didn't. I did tests. I set it up on this and I did tests, and I was like, that's insane. I mean, technology has come a far way, okay? Because back in the day, that piece did not do that. It hindered the sound. Another cool thing is this. It comes with a microphone. So I didn't do this by hand. I mean, I literally set up a microphone, set it in place. I did 4 measurements, back, forward, back, forward, back, forth. It ran 2 sweeps, you know, and then it made its correction. Now, I did it twice to see if it was going to change it. It didn't. It was very similar. I mean, depending on the room, if I move the mic just a tiny bit, that's what's so crazy about sound, it would change the image. So I left the mic the same. When I put it back to the center point, it's going to change a little bit, and I'm obviously going to tell you that. But it was literally identical to the frequencies it was hearing, so it's accurate. Now, the cool thing is this. If you're not a big room correction guy, look at this. So I can go over here and say, well, dude, I want to see and hear on these focals. If I go to my home button, I can go to the parametric EQ. Now, on the parametric EQ, I did a little bump around 90 Hertz, and I did a little bump around 6K. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to see what it's going to translate like in a system that gets enhanced. Most of the time, the 90 Hertz range, 120 range, because it's sort of the sub and it's sort of the top, that range usually gets lifted on a global setting of a bass setting in your car. Well, the same thing with the 6K. I found out that most of the time it's like right where the 4 is and right where the top is. So 6K is a great fundamental frequency to lift in a car because it lifts the high end and it lifts a little bit below the high end into the energy range, which is the 4K range. So I started to do this in my mix where if instead of going out to your car 5 billion times, because that's what people do, they go out to their car and the bass is enhanced and everything's lifted, and then they listen, they go, oh yeah, that's okay, let me check it in the car. The car has become the default because that's where you spend most of your time. The other thing about the car is now companies are doing acoustic design in that car, and they actually have insulation in the doors, and they're actually EQing the car to sound flat. Some cars amplify it, boost it, lift it. So this is pretty much what we're doing in this room right now. So without further ado, let me at least show you the box here, and then I'm going to get off the video and tell you to and highly recommend you go buy one. The thing is I don't get kickbacks. I don't ask for, you know, for donations. I don't do any of that. I just do this because I actually appreciate this piece of gear. So it's controlled from an iPad. You can actually control it from the front of the thing, but it is, I think it's $300 and something. It's incredible. It's unbelievable. The other solutions that I've done have been in the thousands of dollars. I would highly recommend this because I do not want to sign off on this video until I show you this thing and tell you this. These rooms are really well put together. Okay, so the room over there is well put together, and this room's well put together. So the problem is I'll have to take it out and get back to you with no insulation, no room correction, no nothing, and see if this thing still does a decent job. Because I don't know if it has to drastically reduce your bass by 90, you know, decibels or something. I would highly recommend get your speakers as close as possible to the image that you like, but you have to understand, if you want to go to a recording school or if you're at that position in your life, it is highly recommended by me because you're going to get to hear rooms that are treated. You're going to get to hear images of speakers. That was one of the greatest things that I learned at recording school, was what a flat room sounds like, because it traveled with me my whole life. Because I was Mr. I don't want to go to school. Okay, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to school. I'll just learn from people around here, and I just felt in my life like that's what I need to do. And I learned a lot about analog, tape, reel to reel. I learned about cleaning stuff, building cables. Learned about speakers and the placement. I learned about all kinds of stuff. I actually went to a smaller school. It was called the Recording Workshop because I didn't want to do some elaborate thing, and I don't think that that should be required. I think you should be able to learn about this. This is a skill, and then it becomes an art form, and then it becomes, in the process, it's always continued to be a passion, but you got to think about it this way. So the DBX is cool. Let's check it out. So you just saw the screen. It has a limiter built in as well, and the thing is, as I zoom in and end the video, the limiter, hopefully this thing, yeah, there you go, you can see it. So actually it's the top box, and the top box is the Driverack, and that one's feeding the other studio right now. But there's the microphone. Now if you follow this up, there's the mic, and I was going to do it in this room, see what's up. But yeah, it's just an RTA mic. You can actually, I think the RTA mic has to come separate with it. There might be some incentives, rebates, stuff like that. But back to it. It has a limiter, it has delay compensation, which is really cool for people doing their own videos at home and their movies, and if you're doing like independent film, things like that, you can make sure that your speakers, based on where they're at in the room, are delay compensated for, so your ad-libs, look at how much hip-hop music I do, your audio is translating to the film in the correct time. Another problem with one of the things that really just drove me nuts with the more expensive one was the latency was insane, and you had to correct for it and realize, wow, man, this is really detrimental to the workflow, because I felt like I was fixing that as much as I was fixing the mix. So with that being said, I didn't mean to, you know, discriminate that company, because it's unbelievable what they did. But this one just has some basic stuff. GEQ, Xover, which is crossover points for multiple speaker setups. A lot of this stuff I will never use because that's not what I'm using it for. The limiter I will use, the compressor I'll use. and the actual auto EQ, man, if I could say that correctly, is one that I use. Another cool feature is this: if you're in the studio and you mute, you can mute your monitors just in case. So when that thing turns on, it mutes the monitors, so you don't go smacking your monitors with some insane signal because some dude left a mic on in the other room, or it fed back. Another cool feature: if you are a tracking studio, it actually has a feedback suppression. I think that's what it is, AFS, auto feedback suppression. I could be wrong, but I think that's what that is. So yeah, long story short, it's just a little 1U rack piece, and it's unbelievable. And I'm just gonna leave the video like this, that I haven't bought anything that costs that much money and did that much for the image of a workflow, of a system. No latency, very easy to set up. The other solutions, let's talk about that before I get out of here. The other solutions are plug-in based, a lot of them, where you put it on the end of your Pro Tool session, your Logic session or whatever. I can never do that because the problem is I have to see what the RMS level is, I have to see what the average loudness is, I have to see what's going on with the meters in here. A lot of times we're feeding that master output to a summing device or a box, and that really ruins that because you're not hearing what the actual image is doing anymore. You're not hearing what the gain structure is anymore. You're not hearing what the lift in the sound is. You're not hearing the compression correctly because you're actually EQing all that before it hits all this. So I can't do that. The thing is in this room, we're avoiding everything at all costs. It's the most pristine sound possible. It's converter 10M, which is unbelievable. It's bionic, I think. I don't know what's going on with that thing, but it's incredible. Then it hits this, and we're trying to keep the utmost signal and in the most pristine sound we can possibly imagine, and then we lift it and then we print it back into WaveLab. And WaveLab has its meters, and then we do our conversion, and we're giving you the best sounding mix, you know. And that's what mastering is. It's a lot of people are looking at services, you know, stuff like that. We'll get into that in another video. But a lot of that sound is coming from retaining that image, coming from that great gear. So, and that's what people hear. They hear that image, that pristineness, that quality, and people relate to that. If you don't think they do, they do. They go, wow, man, that sounds great. So with that being said, the DBX comes after the fact. It's between the monitors and the converter, and it does not change anything you're doing in the system. It's just what you're hearing from the system. So I would say, and I would definitely tell you the truth, if the thing was degrading the signal, I'd be the first one in line to tell you that, but it's not. It was one of those things that I was so nervous about that was like, dude, if it just pinches the image, if it changes the perception, if it sounds like it's overbearing and compressed, then that's a problem. But I am here to tell you the truth, man. This did not do that, and I was blown away for the price point of that box. So yes, this piece was pretty much designed and strictly, it looks like it's designed for live sound guys. It looks like it's designed to be that piece that you'd put on your main monitors, you know, at a club or a venue. But it also came in extremely handy in this room, and I'll tell you right now, I would have no problem. I would have absolutely no problem putting it in this room. You know, you have to be careful, you have to understand what you're doing, but at the end of the day, if you have a little bit of knowledge of, you know, you got some bass traps, you got a little image, you've done your homework, I would say, you know, do a little more research on it. But I think it would be cool for yourself in your studio to see what this is all about, because at the end of the day, the options it has, we have to prepare ourselves for in the real world as limiters. Big EDM shows have limiters. I mean, big stages have limiters. They control the sound in their own way. Compressors, they have compressors. EQs, they have EQs. So, you know, you may find that a lot of people are using this setup live, so what better than to check it as before it hits that. So, my name is Doug Jenkins, iMixAmaster.com. I appreciate everybody that watches this channel. I try to give that a huge amount of information in a little bit of time. A little under about 30 minutes, and I hope you enjoy this. So that's what our videos are all about, helping people out. And I think the Dbx Driverack Pa2 for a modern studio is an absolute phenomenal piece of gear. Peace. I gotta roll, dude. I gotta go eat.